In the 1970s, conflict in the Middle East precipitated a shortage of petroleum in the Western world, triggering a period of skyrocketing prices, recession, and a stagnant economy that lasted much of the decade, known as the energy crisis. The world was still in the process of rebounding from the experience in the early 1980s, and it was into this era that the Transformers franchise was born. Informed and inspired by the events of the past decade, both the original Marvel comic book and especially the animated series centered the Autobots and Decepticons' struggle around their own energy crisis, both sides battling for the resources of Earth, in need of energy above all else if they were to claim victory in their eternal war. Using Earth's resources, they created what today is known as the primary fuel source of all Transformers, Energon. Energon has a complex history. In the decades since its introduction, many different series have expanded on the concept, building on one another to redefine its place in the Transformers universe as we understand it today. It's gone from being simply a kind of fuel to being absolutely ubiquitous in Cybertronian culture. It powers Transformers' bodies, their machines, their weapons, it flows through their veins. For a race of robots, it's food, drink, fuel, blood, and medicine all in one, valued more than anything else to the point that they even use it as currency, even though it has a tendency to explode if mishandled. Energon is the creation of Primus, the cosmic being who is god and creator of the Transformer race. It is pure energy given physical form, and in its most rarefied state, it's the basic molecular building block of both the living metal of Cybertronian bodies and the sparks that give them life. Energon occurs naturally in various raw states, liquid, gas, and solid, most commonly as crystals. Bursting with unchecked power, raw energon is unstable and easily detonated, and has to be processed into a form safe for Transformers to use. Processed energon typically takes a liquid form, which Transformers either inject directly into their systems or consume as a beverage. Energon is stored in containers known as Energon cubes. The events of the war usually result in Cybertron's supply of natural energon being drained, forcing the Transformers to search for deposits on other planets, or to create synthetic energon by converting other sources of energy. The story of Energon began with the first episode of the Transformers cartoon in 1984, which introduced Energon cubes as a kind of fuel cell used by the Decepticons to collect and convert energy stolen from the resources of Earth into a concentrated form. After a while, the show began using Energon as the name for this concentrated liquid energy itself. In this series, the search for energy was specifically the reason the Transformers left Cybertron, and the Decepticons' quest to plunder Earth's resources and convert them into Energon was the focus of many stories in the show's first 2 seasons. Early episodes depicted the filled cubes as iridescent, compressed stacks, but this would later be changed to single cubes that glowed a purplish pink, which became the standard color of Energon for much of Transformers' history. Initially, the cartoon presented Energon as being an invention of the Decepticons, which only they used, the empty cubes famously being generated by Soundwave, while the Autobots instead powered themselves using recharging chambers. But as the show continued, the continuity got kinda blurry, and it started to show the Autobots using Energon too, even setting up Autobot City on Earth to generate it by harnessing renewable natural resources. By the 3rd season, the notion that Energon was or had ever been a Decepticon-only innovation was abandoned, and the fuel was shown to be in use even by alien species all across the galaxy. As a creation of the cartoon, Energon wasn't featured in the Marvel comic book at first. The Transformers hadn't specifically come to Earth to look for energy in the comic, but the acquisition of fuel was still a key element of those early stories, which involved a search for a way to convert Earth's gasoline into a form they could use, which Sparkplug Wiki helped them develop. However, Energon cubes were quickly introduced into the comic in late 1985, and just like the cartoon, were created through the conversion of other energy sources, including geothermal power and even the sonic energy of a rock and roll concert. The first piece of media to present Energon as something other than a synthetic fuel created by converting other resources was, surprisingly, the short-lived 1987 comic book Transformers in 3D by Blackthorn Publishing, which debuted the idea that true Energon existed as a naturally occurring element. By coincidence, this same idea would also be hit upon by 1996's Beast Wars animated series, through which it would go on to much greater fame. The two series took very different approaches though. In Blackthorn's comic, true Energon was a liquid that was, well, it was being pooed out by aliens. But Beast Wars introduced the enduring concept of raw, natural Energon crystals. Beast Wars saw the Predacon criminal Megatron travel back in time to prehistoric Earth in search of Energon, only to discover that the planet was so rich in raw crystals that the amount of Energon radiation in the atmosphere would overload a Transformer's body after only a few minutes exposure. To protect themselves, both Megatron's Predacons and their pursuers, Optimus Primal's Maximals, were forced to adopt beast modes with organic skins that screened the radiation out. Energon began to take on more fantastical, almost magical abilities in the various Japanese original Beast Wars spin-off cartoons, which introduced Energon matrices, personal Energon sources carried by high-ranking Maximals and Autobots, which responded to emotions and instilled incredible transformations in their wielders, powering them up into new forms and inducing combinations. Energon also exhibited these powers in 2004's Transformers Energon. As you can likely tell from the title, the fuel played a key role in this series, which saw the Autobots work with humanity to mine deposits of raw Energon on Earth and around the solar system, only to face attacks by the Decepticons, who sought to obtain enough Energon to repair the monster planet Unicron. Subgroups specially bred to handle raw Energon, the Autobot Omnicons and the Decepticon Terrorcons, processed and sculpted the dangerous element into various usable forms, including power-enhancing Energon stars and modular Energon weapons for their comrades, which came packaged as accessories with the figures in the Energon toy line. Though, rather than the classic pink, in this series the refined Energon used by the Autobots was red, while the Decepticons used an unrefined green. This series was the first to link Energon with the Transformers god Primus, furthering its increasingly unearthly nature, depicting it not simply as a fuel, but as the mysterious source of life itself, its energy giving life to stars and planets. This concept was mirrored in 2007's live-action Transformers movie, in which Cybertron and the Transformers were given life by the Energon-generating relic known as the Allspark, which was originally named the Energon Cube during production of the film, the Energon radiation of which could even bring ordinary machines to life. The same year, stories from the Transformers Collectors Club established that Transformers' bodies and sparks were made from a rarefied form of Energon itself. All these different scattered ideas were united in the new aligned continuity that debuted in 2010, cementing our current understanding of Energon. Beginning with the War for Cybertron video game, this continuity popularized the depiction of Energon as glowing blue, which would go on to become the standard color used for the fuel in all subsequent TV series to date. While synthetic Energon, as seen in the Transformers Prime animated series, was green in color. In this series, the formula to create synthetic Energon, or Synth-N, had been lost for eons, until Autobot medic Ratchet rediscovered it in the present day, though his early experiments to recreate the fuel yielded a dangerously addictive brew that increased both the performance and aggression of users. The aligned continuity also introduced Energon's evil counterpart, Dark Energon. Just as Energon springs forth from Primus, Dark Energon is the so-called blood of his evil brother Unicron, the Lord of Chaos. Though a powerful fuel that boosts the strength of any Transformer who uses it, like Unicron, Dark Energon is poisonous and corruptive, and it has the ability to reanimate dead Cybertronians as feral zombies. Other notable variations of Energon that have been featured in Transformers stories over the years have included Toxic Energon, or Tox-N, a poisonous green offshoot refined into a biological weapon by the Decepticons, Red Energon, or Hyperjon, which grants super speed to its user, and various super-enhanced versions that are capable of boosting the strength and abilities of users, like Super Energon and Ore 13. The latter of these was one of a series of Energon-derived ores featured in IDW Publishing's comic books, grown on other planets by the Decepticon scientist Shockwave as part of an effort to develop an alternate fuel source. While Ore 13 grew on Earth, the 12 ores on other worlds inexplicably developed unique powers over space, time, and matter, which granted users abilities like teleportation, time travel, mind control, and more. Energon continues to regularly feature in new Transformers media, a constant objective required to fuel the war. In IDW's new rebooted comic book universe, government rationing of Energon is one of the inciting factors that leads to the rise of the Decepticons. Energon's life-giving powers have even recently been central to the premise of 2019's BotBots toy line, responsible for bringing to life all the various products in a shopping mall. From just a fuel to the mystical stuff of life itself, Energon is quite simply one of the most important concepts in the world of the Transformers. And just as it was when it was created in the 80s, a real-world reminder of the material cost of war and the fact that some resources don't last forever. And those are the basics on Energon. If you liked this video or learned a little something, hit the like button and subscribe for more Transformers history and lore. Ring the bell to be notified about future episodes or get early access to them by supporting the series on Patreon.